This is our second video on sampling techniques. So in the last video, we talked about what the 5 sampling techniques were: random, systematic, stratified, cluster, and which one am I missing? Convenience are the 5. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through an example of different ways to ask a question that use these different sampling techniques so that you can see kind of how they work. So if you haven't watched the previous video on what the sampling techniques are, you really should. Otherwise, this isn't going to make any sense. But let me go through this. Okay? So say you wanted to know something about how Stevenson students feel about something. Like, for example, if you wanted to collect information about how people feel about going to pass-fail grading, which is something a lot of students have been talking about this semester. So I'm not going to talk about that. But if you wanted information about something like this, how could you ask students to get a representative sample? Okay? And so I've got 5 different kind of proposals of ways that we're going to collect this information. Each of these fits a different one of our 5 sampling techniques. So let me read through all of them, and then we'll go through and we'll identify which one fits which. Okay? So the first technique, obviously this won't work this semester because nobody's in the cafeteria, but you sit in the cafeteria and you ask every 4th person who comes in what they think. Okay? So that's one way you could do it. You could post a poll in your Instagram story and collect data that way. You could randomly select 5 different class sections and then go and interview every student in those class sections and ask them the question. That's our third one. For number 4, you could randomly choose 30 students from the whole school. And then number 5, you could randomly select 10 freshmen, 10 sophomores, 10 juniors, and 10 seniors. Okay? So 5 different ways of getting at an answer to this question. Each of these fits a different sampling technique. So you can see these are obviously very different ways, and they may vary in kind of the quality that you get. But what differs here really is the sampling technique. So let's start with the first one. So in the first one, we're asking every 4th person who comes into the cafeteria, so a random ordering of people. Every 4th one, we ask the question. This is a systematic sample. Okay, so that's a systematic sample where you could do every 4th, every 5th, whatever you want to do, but every so many people you ask them the question. Okay? Second one, you post a poll in your Instagram story. Now, is this going to get you very good data? Probably not. It's just going to be your friends. It's not going to be people who necessarily, might be people who don't even go to the school, right? So this one, though, is easy. It's an easy way to collect data. That's our convenience sample. So convenience sample is easy. Generally doesn't get you very good data. Not going to be really worth much, but it doesn't take you that much effort either. Okay? You randomly select 5 class sections and interview every student in those sections. Okay? So this is one of the ones where we're dividing up into groups, right? So a class section is a group of students. We're going to split up the entire university into those class sections, and then we randomly select 5 of them and interview all of the students in that section. Okay? Now remember, the 2 where we split up into groups are stratified and cluster. And these are very confusing, and it's easy to get confused between the 2 of them. This one is a cluster sample. Okay? Because you've divided entirely up into groups, and then you pick entire groups to ask. Okay? So you ask the entire class section. Okay? Whereas if you had divided up into groups and then randomly selected some from each group, that would be a stratified sample. Okay? And that's what number 5 is. In number 5, we've divided everybody up into freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior, but we don't take all of the juniors or all of the freshmen or something like that, right? We're going to take a random selection from each. And that's the difference. That's what makes this one stratified and this one cluster. Okay? So stratified, you randomly take some from each group. Cluster, you randomly take certain entire groups. Okay? And so that leaves the 4th one, You randomly choose 30 students from the whole school. This is our random sample. Okay? We're not dividing them up in any particular way. We're not taking them in any systematic kind of way. We're just taking 30 random students. Okay? So those are the 5 different sampling techniques. Those are just examples. Obviously, you can do these in slightly different ways, but that's the point. The 2 that are trickiest and that you really should focus on is telling the difference between cluster and stratified. In stratified, you divide up into groups and take some from each group. In cluster, you divide up into groups and then take some of the groups and take all of them from each group that you decide on. Okay? In our next video, we'll talk about kind of problems with different kinds of statistical studies.